Good afternoon. And our student Alexandra is going to open up the program.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. I'm excited to open today's conversation in honor of Latinx Heritage Month and introduce our featured participants. My name is Alexandra Ramirez. I'm a sophomore majoring in forensic psychology with aspirations of joining the FBI. Commissioner Denise Miranda, a first-generation Puerto Rican, made history in May of 2025 when she was confirmed by the state Senate as the first Afro-Latina to lead the New York State Division of Human Rights. The Division of Human Rights is dedicated to eliminating discrimination, remedying injustice, and promoting equal opportunity, access, and dignity for all New Yorkers. It enforces the New York State Human Rights Law and investigates instances when the rights of New Yorkers have been violated. When violations are found, the division can order remedies such as reinstatement, back pay, attorney fees, and more. Among her priorities, Miranda is focused on overhauling the agency's discrimination complaint intake process and implementing improvements to expedite the processing of complaints. Commissioner Miranda received her bachelor's degree from New York University and her Juris Doctor from St. John's Law School. I am so excited to hear about her story and the important work of the agency. Today's conversation will be facilitated by our college president, Karol V. Mason. Before joining John Jay, Mason served as the United States Assistant Attorney General and head of the Department of Justice's Office of Justice Programs. She oversaw an array of criminal justice initiatives and funding advancing community, police trust, and reentry. President Mason received her law degree from the University of Michigan Law School and her bachelor's from the University of North Carolina. I'd like to thank the Office of External Affairs for arranging today's program and offering me this opportunity. So please join me in welcoming Commissioner Miranda to John Jay College. Thank you.
So, Commissioner Miranda, in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, we are so glad to have you with us and want to give you the first words.
Well, thank you, President. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I want to thank you for the privilege of actually coming down here to John Jay and speak and engage in this leadership series that you're hosting. As she mentioned, I am the commissioner of the New York State Division of Human Rights. Thank you. I've been in state service now for 8 years, going on 9 years. I led another agency called the New York State Justice Center for the protection of people with special needs. And so it's been a really interesting road, mostly public service. But I will say that, what's really, truly important right now, I think is the conversation we're having regarding civil rights, right? And, it's opportunities like this for us to engage with students in academia and the public to talk about the work that we do, the protections that exist, the human rights that are still in place, despite what's going on in Washington, D.C. So I welcome the opportunity to talk a little bit about my work and a little bit about my background. I am born and raised New York. Through and through, from the Bronx. I don't know if anyone's here from the Bronx, but that's right. And as you mentioned, Puerto Rican Afro-Latina. And so sitting in this particular position at the table is particularly important to make sure that we're taking care of all of our communities and making sure that we see ourselves in the tables and the leaders that serve us.
That is wonderful, a wonderful way to open up the conversation because you do give us hope. We are all happy that we are living in New York State in the midst of this. But before we get to helping us retain our hope, I want people to understand your journey to this job so that people understand, because our young folks are here. Raise your hand, students, so she can see who you are, because she's talking to you. Because she was you. And I want her to tell you her journey so that you can see the pathways that we're expecting you all to follow.
So let me start by saying that I am the product of two CUNY grads. Both of my parents met at City College long time ago. But they are CUNY grads and did their master's and went on to become educators in public school in the Bronx. And so I bear that legacy of New York City, of service, of public service, very much ingrained in our family and in our values. I went to school here, as I mentioned, in the Bronx, went to NYU. I was a commuter student. Being in this building reminds me a lot about NYU, what it's like to be in the city, in New York City. It's not perhaps the traditional campus that you think about when, you're watching TV and you see some of the shows, but it is one of the most amazing cities in the world, and the opportunities that exist here for you to learn inside the classroom and also use the city as a classroom, really unparalleled. And so, I hope that all of you take advantage of the diversity and the richness of New York City. But decided to obviously stay, have never lived anywhere else other than New York City. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad, but it is who I am. And so I started my career in 1996 in the Bronx DA's office. I was a prosecutor, and I was working sex crimes, domestic violence, and child abuse cases. And I was there for 4 years. And after that, I left, and I had a short stay at an organization called, at that time, In Motion, which is now Her Justice. And I was a supervising attorney there working with victims of domestic violence, or I should say survivors of domestic violence, working on family court matters, matrimonial matters, and providing pro bono representation to people who were vulnerable and in need of services. I took some time off. I had a family, a daughter, and decided to stay at home for a bit. But of course, that didn't last very long. And went back and started teaching at a 2-year community college, which I really enjoyed because the students there were they were my people. This is really the easiest way to say it. I could identify with them, their stories, their cultures, their languages, and their struggles. And so, the opportunity to really impact young people who perhaps were like, this school thing's for me, maybe, maybe not. It was a paralegal program, and it was really some of the most fun I've had in my career. After that, decided it was time to go back into full-time work, and I had a practice. I had a private practice of law in the Bronx, where we did criminal work, and we also did family work, and then some employment litigation. And then the market crash, which is probably before your time, but it was a real reality that...
She means before your time,
Yeah,
not
your
mine.
time. We remember that, though, 2008. And decided I wanted to go back to where my heart always was, which was nonprofit. And I worked at a place called the Urban Justice Center, and I was a managing director there of an economic justice program where we did a lot of work and a lot of community organizing around issues of poverty and economic and racial justice. Worked on a lot of public housing campaigns, also did a lot of advocacy and policy work in the space of public benefits. And then I was asked to join the administration, and that's when I went into state service, and I was Senate confirmed as the ED of the New York State Justice Center. And the New York State Justice Center is an agency that sort of acts as an investigatory agency and investigates abuse and neglect of people with special needs who are in care. Mm-hmm. So approximately 1 million people in the state of New York who are in care, whether it's psychiatric, residential for youth, and ensuring that people who are vulnerable, right, are not being abused by their caretakers. And thankfully that doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And if you're familiar with some of the legacy of Willowbrook in New York and the abuses that occurred there, it's extremely important to make sure that vulnerable communities and marginalized communities are protected because they do not have the same resources that many of us have. So I spent 7 years there, and then last year, the governor asked me to please move over to the Division of Human Rights. It was a period of transition for the agency, and there were some challenges there, and she asked me to step in, and of course, I serve at the pleasure, and it's an honor and a privilege to be entrusted with a state agency, especially one that's responsible for civil rights. And I've been there now for about 1.5 years, and we are having a great time. Despite the political climate, because every single day I wake up knowing that we live in one of the most progressive states and that New York is not going to bend at the knee of the federal government. And irrespective of what's going on down there in D.C., there are protections that are here in place to ensure that you and we can all have equal access and opportunity and live a life, right? And avail ourselves of everything that this state has to offer.
Like I said, she's here to give us hope and retain our hope, not just give it, but retain it. And what I love is I want to make sure that people see the dots of where she started in the Bronx DA's office doing this, and how she's progressively added categories of people that she's been trusted to protect and trusted to protect their rights, so that as people saw your talent, they're like, oh, she's done a good job here. Oh, let's do this. Let's do this. And so we are the beneficiaries. And so Aileen has a question for you.
Sure.
Do you want to? Yeah, good.
Hi, Commissioner. My name is Eileen Calixto. I'm a criminal justice major at John Jay College. And my first question for you is this program is in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. How has your background and identity as an Afro Latina influenced your priorities, professional actions, and experiences?
So I always say I am Denise everywhere I go. And who I am and how I show up is who I am at home and how I show up. And so um, that comes with me everywhere. And I'm extremely proud of the heritage that we have and the history of resilience, right, within our respective communities, the commonality we have among each other of many of the struggles that we have all endured in the great old United States. And so for me, showing up is really about appreciating the nuance of our culture and appreciating the experience and the breadth and scope of where we come from. I'm Afro Latina, not just because it's really humid out, but every single day. And, I recognize that that's different. I have a different lens in terms of my experience walking through this world as a Puerto Rican woman. And so I'm very conscious of how race and ethnicity intersect. And that's particularly important when we bring that to our work. I think that oftentimes many of our communities of color are sort of, there's an assumed identity that we're a monolith, and we're not. Right? There's so many different facets of our identities, of our experiences that are distinct to who we are and what we look like and how we travel in spaces. And so for me, that's very, very important to make sure that when I'm here, I'm talking about the full experience of who I am and the challenges that I have, which are going to be different than some of the challenges that some of my cousins have that look a little bit different than me. And so that's really important to make sure that we have those conversations, that we create that space, and also that understanding.
I love that part about your Denise, no matter what space you're in, and you're the same person wherever you are, and we appreciate that. And I particularly appreciated the hairpiece. In case you didn't miss that part about the humidity, Erica
So
understands
humid.
it too. So, what is a typical day like for you? Because we want our students to understand what the possibilities are out there about how they can use the degree at John Jay. Tell us what your typical day is like. And as you're talking about the typical day, where there are opportunities for career choices for our students to find their place in this work.
Absolutely. So what I will say is that there is no typical day. The way the day starts isn't always the way the day goes, because life happens, right? Work happens, news happens. There are things that are going on politically that will certainly, stop the clock, and you've got to drop what you're doing. And then obviously the other side is we're running a state agency. So our office, we have 12 offices, close to almost 400 employees when we're at our full level. It's a budget of approximately $40 million. So there's a lot of juggling going on. But I will say that it is a combination, I think, of a lot of external engagements like this and opportunities to meet and speak with the public and with the state and different stakeholders, as well as the business of running an agency, right, which is where the operations comes into play. And so a lot of my day is sort of between those two capacities and spaces. I'm very excited about the work that we've done at the division, particularly the fact that we were almost doubling our budget thanks to the governor and the legislature and the investment that has been made at the Division of Human Rights. So we have done an amazing amount of hiring. Over 120 people, I was told yesterday, have been hired at the Division of Human Rights. And we're talking about every position from legal assistants, paralegals, attorneys, data analysts, strategic engagement folks, media, comms, you name it, right? An agency will have all of those positions available. So the one thing I really want to make sure that I share is that you may think, well, you know what, Division of Human Rights, I'm a comms, I'm a journalism, I'm doing graphic design. There's nothing here for me. That is absolutely so not true, right? Because we have all of those positions within our wheelhouse, within our agencies. And those are all functions that we rely on. You may not be interested in doing civil rights, but you may want to work in a space that has that culture and that environment, and you're a data person. Well, guess what? You can start helping us with some of our data collection and assessments and analysis in that space while doing something that really contributes to a larger mission. Hiring is, a big priority of ours. I would suggest that if anyone's interested, to please go to our website, www.dhr.newyork.gov. Postings are there. There are also internship opportunities. I'm very proud of the fact that under my leadership, we launched our first summer internship program for law students and undergrads, and they are paid. I'll say that again because
Oh,
I
those are the
remember.
magic words,
Right, I remember what a
paid.
paid internship was. Those are paid internship opportunities. There are also fellow programs. There are a lot of opportunities for folks who want to do this work. And last but not least, I also recognize that there are elements of privilege, right, associated with getting experience when you're a student. And when you are working a job and you're perhaps, funding your own educational expenses, sometimes there are hard choices that people have to make with respect to working this job in retail, right, and getting experience that's going to help get you where you want to go professionally. There are agencies that are out here that are willing to work with you if your commitment cannot rise to the level, let's say, of a full-time position. But it's important to me that at the division, we can provide those opportunities. So perhaps it's a capstone project, right? Perhaps it's more of a remote opportunity that we can offer you because we recognize that you have other responsibilities outside of school. Don't limit yourself. Don't say, I can't do that because it's 40 hours. Come in, apply, have the conversation. You'd be surprised sometimes what we're able to figure out if there's mutual interest, that you can have a space and you can do both things. Take care of your bills and also have something on your resume.
I love that. And that's a perfect segue to Alexandra's question.
Hi, my name is Alexandra, and I'm a forensic psychology major. My question for you is, for students interested in a career in public service, can you give us some insight into how you identified what opportunities and the preparation and skill sets you needed to be successful in pursuing your role?
Absolutely. So I will tell you that I think what has helped me the most has been maintaining and building relationships. I have a daughter who is your age, in her early 20s, graduated college recently, and my advice to her has always been relationships, relationships, relationships. And also investing in those relationships and your reputation doesn't start at 50. It doesn't start at 40. It starts in your 20s. Who you are right now, who your professors know you to be, you're going to be surprised, but you're going to see some of these same people in your travels 10, 15 years from now. And I thought when I was sitting in your shoes, there's absolutely no way. I'm in the Bronx CA's office. It's all our first jobs right out of law school, right? 4 years, I've done my time. I'm moving on. Never going to see these people again. Best of luck. Lo and behold, fast forward, my chief of staff is from where? The Bronx CA's office. We started in 1996 together. I respected her work ethic. She respected mine. Our paths crossed. I was looking for a chief of staff. She was a great attorney. She still is. And I was like, you know what? You're going to be that person that we need here at the division to help elevate. Who she was in her early 20s is why she is where she is right now in her 50s. And I'm in my 50s too, so I'm not putting anyone's age out there before I get into trouble with my colleagues. But, I say all that to say that, the character and the commitment you bring to schoolwork, your relationships, your professional relationships, keeping in touch with people, it really does make a world of difference. And there is no job too small where that investment is not worth your time, because the folks in this room are going to be in positions where they're going to be hiring people, they're going to be networking with people, they're going to be creating opportunities, and who you are is going to really make a difference. The jobs that I have received have been through relationships and people knowing the type of work that I do. It's no longer, I shouldn't say it's no longer, but it is not exclusively about a job opening, a posting on Indeed. Yes, you can apply on Indeed, but I can assure you, especially with social media, someone's going to know someone who knows you. And what they say is going to really make a difference.
I love that part about the importance of relationships and not just thinking about relationship with your peers and people above you, but the people and support relationships matter. My favorite story is I spent 30 years at a law firm, and somebody was interviewing for a job, and they were rude to one of the guys in our mailroom, whose cousin happens to be somebody who called in and said these people were rude to him, And so people tell stories about you, and you people you don't think are watching you have influence. And they're important. And the other thing, my old secretary and I used to do training for new lawyers together about how to treat support staff. You can't get your job done. None of us can do our job unless everybody in the space is doing their job. And if you burn those bridges, they can make sure your job does not get done. So
Ever.
Right. They
My
put him at the
executive
bottom of the
assistant's
pile.
right here, best executive assistant in state service. It is so true. How you treat people matters, and people notice when you walk into a room who you acknowledge and who you don't acknowledge, and it speaks to your character. And for me, those are the things that I notice when I see someone coming in and interviewing, or we're meeting folks. How do you treat the people around you? It's important. And also, sometimes how the bosses treat other people might be the decision whether you want to work there or
Exactly.
you don't.
So I hope I'm treating everybody right, okay? So this is the 80th anniversary of, it didn't even have this name, the law, the human rights law, back when it was first enacted. How are you keeping the spirit of what was supposed to be when they enacted this and its critical role now? And you talk about where we are in the country today. So talk about how you wear this mantle, this heavy responsibility of protecting our civil rights here in the context of the conversation that's going on nationally.
So, as you mentioned, we celebrated 80 years of the human rights law, right? And what I think is most fascinating about the human rights law is it is a living and breathing thing, right? It has evolved. And so where it started and where we are, totally, completely different, right? Right now, the New York State human rights law covers areas of education, employment, housing, as well as public accommodation. There are 19 protected classes in New York State. Some of the most expansive protections in the entire country are here in New York State. And it's worth noting that New York State was the first state in the country to actually pass a human rights, civil rights law. So that is a legacy that I'm extremely proud of. But people don't realize that, when we are talking about protected classes, we're talking about survivors of domestic violence, we're talking about gender and sexual expression, we're talking about veteran status, we're talking about race, religion, ethnic origin, we're talking about language. There really is an incredible breadth and scope of protections that are afforded for people. One of the things, especially in this political climate where, DEI and protection and civil rights seem to be words that, some people seem to take great offense to for reasons I'll never understand. I think it's important to understand that the human rights law protects everybody. Not just minorities, not just people of color, not just people who are historically marginalized or vulnerable. It protects everybody. It includes sexual harassment. I sign cases, every single case that comes out of the division, I have to review and approve. I sign cases where white, male, cisgender men are victims, and they get their due justice at the Division of Human Rights. So when we think about what civil rights means, there isn't anyone in this room that doesn't fit into a category where they should be able to rely on New York State law to protect them in the context of their life.
I'm taking notes too because I'm learning from you too. It's a habit of mine. So I love this characterization of making sure that everybody understands that it's here to protect all of us. So what's the process if somebody feels as if they need to access the protections of your office? What does that look like in a practical matter?
So I'm going to take a moment to brag a little bit because when I got to the Division of Human Rights, you're there, you're going through your initial briefings, and I'm like, all right, what does this look like? I asked that question. How does a case start? What's the process? I think they broke down about 14 different ways you could start a case at the Division of Human Rights, and none of them seemed to make a whole lot of sense to me. And the only thing I saw was red flag, right? Operations, consistency, standardization. And so within the past year and a half, we have worked tirelessly to revamp our entire intake system. And I'm very proud to say that as of a couple of weeks ago, we actually opened up our call center. And now you can actually call 844 New York State, NYS DHR1. Is that correct, Erica? NYS New York. It's so new that I'm still remembering. NYS DHR1. And you can speak to a live agent at our call center. And they're available from 9 to 5, and you can actually speak with them and describe the incident that you would like to report, and they will help you file the case. They will ask you, we need this information, please provide a description. They will walk you through the process so that we can have the most complete information possible so that we can make a determination as to whether you have a viable complaint of discrimination. In the world of automation is wonderful, but there is something to be said about being able to speak with someone. It's language accessible, so we have access to all of the languages, and to actually be able to communicate and say, you don't have all the information we need, please call us back when you have the address of your employer, right? That's information that's critical. So our intake center is brand new. It has been extremely successful. New Yorkers are really appreciating the level of customer service that we're offering, and it's providing clarity because then they can get their questions answered. So when do you think I will hear? How long is the wait? What's the next step in the process? So once you file that claim, it gets reviewed by our intake center. They will make sure they have a complete complaint, and the complaint will get served on all the parties. So if I'm filing a complaint against my employer, hypothetically, let's just say New York State will receive a copy of my complaint, and they will have an opportunity to respond. They will submit their response, and that will get assigned to an investigator. Our investigators, our largest unit at the Division of Human Rights, some of them are attorneys, some of them are not attorneys. You do not need to be an attorney to be an investigator at the Division of Human Rights. So that's something I also want to flag, that there are lots of opportunities for a lot of different folks with different backgrounds and skills. And they will investigate the case. They will make a determination as to whether there is probable cause or there is no probable cause. If there is no probable cause, the matter is closed, the parties are informed, and that's that. If there is probable cause to believe that discrimination actually has occurred, the parties will be notified and the matter will be set for a hearing. There will be a public hearing and a determination will be made by an administrative law judge. Those are all within the agency of, all within our agency at Division of Human Rights. Very often throughout that process, there are many opportunities where a case may settle. So the parties may reach out and decide that they want to reach a settlement, an agreement, and the settlement can really vary depending on the circumstances of who the parties are and the nature of the offense. It could be penalties, it could be fines, it could be getting a job back, it could be back wages, it could be receiving an apartment if you were discriminated because of you're using a housing voucher. It could be education and policy revisions for an employer. So there are a host of different sort of remedies, right, that are part of a settlement process. Most of our cases do settle, which is good because it provides an expeditious resolution for people who have a matter before the division. But that's sort of the quick overview of how a case gets investigated here at the division. We investigate approximately, I think it's about 8,000 cases a year.
This is what I was wondering, so that people can hear the volume. Did you hear that?
8,000 cases come
A
in
year.
every single year. And again, you're talking about 4 major areas of jurisdiction, 19 protected classes. So what I will say is that no case is the same at all.
And I love how your courage in coming in and looking at the organization and thinking about being user-friendly. That's the term I'll use for people, because your goal is to provide access to people, and thinking about how to make sure that you're structuring it in a way that gives the true access to protect people. How, so you disclosed your age, but I'm not going to use it. I'm way older than you, by the way. What would you tell your younger self if you were sitting in one of these classrooms today that you wish somebody had told you, if you're thinking about going into a life that involves using skills as an advocate? And keep in mind, I'm not saying how that gets used, but what would you tell yourself? Because our students here, we educate fierce advocates for justice in many different arenas, and I'm wondering what you would wish you had known when you were their age.
Be kind to yourself. I think when I was sitting in your shoes, I would sit here and I would look at 2 women like us, right, who have achieved some significant professional success, and it was so intimidating, right, because I was nervous when I would speak up, and there would still be a quiver when I was prosecuting cases in the Bronx, like standing up, like, I'm Denise for the people. But you get your base as you go along, right? And so just because you may have some anxiety about speaking in public, or because you may not feel comfortable in the room, what I can tell you, certainly I can speak for myself, is that every single phenomenal person I know started with a bucket of nerves. And so it takes time, and you will get there. I can promise you will get there. You will see yourself 20 years and you'll see yourself on a video like, wow, look at that, who would have thought that? But don't let that dim your light. Right? Don't shy away from opportunities. Work through it. It gets easier. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And I can tell you that there isn't a person who is sitting and speaking in front of a room who didn't start one day looking in the mirror saying, I'm not sure I can do this, or there's so many people out there. I'm really nervous. What did I get myself into? Get into it. Jump in. It's going to be okay. It'll be fine. It'll be okay.
I love that you put that out there, because Every time I hear people like you say that, I go, it's not just me. I still get nerves speaking in public, really. And I can hear my voice quiver sometimes when I
Same.
don't think other people, and I've been told other people don't hear it, but it's scary.
You can hear it, and you know what I
Exactly.
also say? It's because I care.
I love
Right?
that. I'm going to use that.
You know, sometimes it's because I'm invested and I care. I care about the message I'm giving. I care about the audience. I care about how I'm perceived, right? It comes from a place of being invested. And once you sort of put that in your head, it sort of frames it a little bit differently. At least that's what I tell myself. And then sometimes I just say, get over it, Denise, and let's
Right.
go.
And the other thing that I know that she would share this view as well is your voice deserves to be heard.
That's right.
And your voice is needed because you have a perspective that only you can bring into a room, and we are educating you all to bring that voice into spaces where it may not have been in the past. And it's because it may not have been there and that you have it that give yourself the courage to speak up, because it is scary, but do it anyway because you know that we need to hear it. And so, people talk a lot about the imposter syndrome. I hate that phrase because none of us are imposters. We are who we are. She's Denise every day.
That's right.
I'm Carol every day, except to the students. I'm president, but I'm Carol every day in any space that I'm in, and that's what we need you all to do: is come fill the space with who you are, your experiences, your perspectives, your ideas, and dare I say, your questions. I could keep going, but am I supposed to ask the audience for any questions, Mindy? Okay. If you've got a question, I know there's, you've got Alexandra has the mic. If you've got a question, raise your hand and Alexandra will bring a mic to you. Thank you, Alexandra.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here at the John Jay community. My name is Derek Zimmerman. I'm a faculty member here at John Jay, but I'm also a member of the Dutchess County Human Rights Commission.
Thank you for your work.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I said I had to make this meeting. But in any case, we've run into an issue, okay, in the current political environment that you hinted at. Our work has become a lot harder. Our outreach is being met by people with hard hearts and a lot of curmudgeons out there, and some of them actually show up to disrupt what we're doing, okay? I don't know if this has been brought to you before, but if you have any advice as far as our workshops being more effective, our outreach that's being significantly undermined at this time, what might you give advice
So
for?
I will tell you that I had a call earlier this morning where we were talking about reaching some of the rural communities in upstate New York, especially the agricultural workers, and some of the fears and the tensions that exist in our communities, as well as the hostility. And we were talking about how to make sure that we are not letting them, the disruptors, win. And what we found is that we are moving to do a lot of our activities virtually. And I recognize that it's not the same and that you do lose something, but there is something to be gained also about the accessibility and the ability for people to tap in from the privacy and comfort and security sometimes of their homes, right? Now, for certain programs, that's just not, that ain't it, as I say, right? But I think what we have to think about is sort of resilience and also partnership, and making sure that if we're doing things where we believe that there might be some issues, then reaching out to other organizations, other agencies, so that we can reinforce your presence and be there and show up as well. Because when you're doing small community work, sometimes people sort of discount the partnerships and the relationships you have, but we can have some people show up as well to make sure that we can ensure a smooth process. I'm sure you know, we have our hate and bias prevention unit that's part of the Division of Human Rights. This was created about 3 years ago by the governor, and it is a resource within the Division of Human Rights where we ask for people to report any incidents of hate or bias that they may experience. You can make that phone call. We will take down the information. It can be completely anonymous, but it helps us identify areas, hot areas, where there may be some issues percolating so that we can potentially be proactive and send resources out there. We do community mediation. We will do conflict resolution. We have done programs using the arts to sort of bridge some of those gaps and hopefully ease community tensions. And that's part of our work as well, not just the discrimination investigation. So I would certainly encourage you to reach out to us, and I'm sure we are in touch in our offices, and talk about how we can perhaps provide some extra support for some of the engagement that you're doing, and possibly also facilitate some hard conversations. Let's bring someone in to have some of those conversations about how this is tearing at the fabric of your community and how it's a disservice, right, to everyone in the community if we can't actually have some educational and peaceful and respectful discourse. You know, I think right now we're living in the past 2 weeks, what I've heard described as discourse leaves a lot to my appeal. I think there is discourse and there is hate speech. And just because it's not being screamed or hollered, but it's said in a nice, moderated, professional tone, doesn't mean that it's not hate speech. So I think, there's lots of opportunities for us to partner, and I would love to follow up.
Thank you for raising the work of the hate and bias prevention units. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, we're launching something called Constructive Dialogue Institute work here to have that discourse, that conversation, and ability to listen to each other. Do you have advice for us about how to go about winning hearts and minds about being open to this kind of process?
So I will say that part of the Hate and Bias Prevention Unit is a young adult youth initiative. And if you go to our website or our social media, they are just opening up applications for college students. And this is a pilot program. It is a certificate program. We are looking to recruit individuals who are interested in social justice, interested in the hate and bias prevention work. There are going to be a host of different modules and trainings that will be part of that program. And so I think it really starts with partnership. This is why, being here is particularly important, and finding out about opportunities that exist here so that we can broaden our approach and also our partnership and see how we can work together, right, to make sure that we're bringing our full selves into the room.
Can you repeat again where they should go for the?
So I'm going to make a plug here because I know that the demographic here is, I think, Instagram. Go to the division, New York State
good.
Division of Human Rights. Go to the Instagram page. We also are on Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn. And last but not least, www.dhr.newyork.gov. But our social media team is an absolutely fantastic group of individuals, and we are constantly looking at creating content that resonates with young adults to not only talk to them about the opportunities that exist, like the Youth Council, but also their rights for protection against discrimination.
And I'm going to take an opportunity for a shameless plug for our work too. So students, when you hear the opportunity to take the perspectives training for students for Constructive Dialogue Institute, don't you think, Commissioner, that will make them stand out when they apply for
I
this,
think
to have
that
something
sounds
like
like
that
a
on their
hallmark
resume?
opportunity to talk about being part of something. Listen, whenever you're part of something that is new, not only are you gaining the experience, but you're also contributing to the evolution of that program and the development. And so that's a win-win investment.
So this is directed, so they're recording this, but it's not being streamed, but we'll figure out how we'll use it later. There's a lot of talk these days about the value of higher education and whether you need a higher education degree. Obviously, I think it's very important, but do you have thoughts about how having a higher education degree enabled you to be where you are, and what your thoughts are about its necessity?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is I would not be in the position I'm in, right, without the law degree, without the undergraduate degree. Here's the beauty about education, the ability to use it in so many ways that goes way beyond, what you may initially think. I knew I wanted to be an attorney. I loved criminal law, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, all those nights of watching TV, all those criminal, programs. I was like, this seems really sexy.
I'm so excited that Dateline's new season starts tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. And then you realize you're actually in the work and it's not so sexy. But here we are nevertheless. I can tell you that I never contemplated that I would be in state service. Never thought I'd be a commissioner. But the ability to have credentials and a background in the education has allowed me to pivot, reinvent, do things that I never thought I was going to do, and develop skills that I never thought I would have an opportunity to develop. All of that is a function of having the credentials that you have that allow you to sort of move in different spaces and try things that you never thought you would be trying. For many people, I think the big law firm, I thought at one point when I left the DA's office, I went to a law firm and I was like, I'm on Park Avenue. This is really nice. This is fancy. And then I was introduced to the world of billable hours, and I realized that I was not built for that life. Again, what you envision and where you end up going sometimes are completely two different places, but it's been a blessing and a privilege to be on this journey, and I look forward to what's next.
And I will say that the journey isn't linear. I stayed in that world of billable hours for 30 years, and thank God I got liberated from it. But it enabled me to be able to do public service now.
That's right.
As many people know, I'm living off my retirement. If I hadn't had that, I wouldn't be able to have the privilege of public service
That's right.
now. So are there any other questions in the audience? Because I've got plenty more. All right, don't say I didn't give you a chance. And so one of the we talked about, I talked about how your job, your presence, your vision, and your persistence gives us hope. We have a large immigrant population that are, for many reasons, under stress right now. How is your office supporting that community?
So we're partnering with a lot of different organizations that do immigration work, because that is, I think, at the forefront of many immigrant communities, right? What to do if. And unfortunately, the resources that exist out here are really strained. That is a sad reality. The question we often get is, how does our work, how does the human rights law work to protect immigrants? And we do. It might be a little bit different than perhaps what people are often contemplating with, who do I call if ICE comes? But what I will tell you is that what we are seeing is that the weaponization of ICE, right? So employers and housing folks and a whole other host of folks who sometimes are bad actors are threatening people with ICE. Right. If you don't do this, we're going to call ICE. Where are you from? Be careful, because we can call ICE on you. If your neighbor is here illegally, you know what? We can call ICE. We actually had a recent case where a property management company posted up in the lobby, if you believe your neighbors are illegal, call ICE. Well, that's illegal. You cannot threaten people regarding their national origin with immigration or with ICE. That is illegal. That is protected. You can file a complaint at the New York State Division of Human Rights. We had that complaint. That case was settled. A significant fine and penalties were issued to the offenders, and that sign obviously has been removed. But the fact that communities are, this is being, again, weaponized and wielded in a way to terrorize, that's what I believe, to create terror and fear is unacceptable, and people need to know that there is a place that you can call. We often partner also with the Office of New Americans to do trainings to make sure that people are aware of what to do when ICE does come, and what their rights are with respect to how to respond. But, I think the most important thing is recognizing the degree of empathy which we must have for our fellow New Yorkers. Right? We are all New Yorkers, wherever we come from, our experiences, but we're in New York for a reason, and we have to make sure that we're supporting each other. And part of what makes New York special are the values that we have and the empathy we have for our neighbors and the appreciation, right, for the diversity. I mean, I see it in this room alone. That's what makes New York special, and so protecting that is something that's obviously very near to me, but also institutions like John Jay and CUNY, of course.
So, these cases that get to you, how do you spread the word so that those potential landlords understand that this is not acceptable behavior? Because I know you don't wait for the case to come. How do you make sure that you use that information then to chill them from bad behavior?
There are two mechanisms really when I think about that question. We have an area, we have a unit in our agency called Division Initiated Action Unit. So obviously when we're talking about the 8,000 complaints, those are individuals who are calling us, they've had an experience, they've experienced discrimination, and they want to file a complaint. We have a unit of investigators and attorneys who look for systemic issues, right? Systemic issues like the one I just described, right, where perhaps there may be a resident in there that doesn't want to file that complaint because of fear of retaliation, which is also a reportable offense. but we are aware that this is going on. We can file. We will be the party. We will be the plaintiff, so to speak, the petitioner in the matter, and we will file a complaint. So oftentimes, these division-initiated complaints, they really come from our experiences in New York City, and New York State, or the news. We have situations where we realize that there's a pattern of sexual abuse going on and sexual harassment within one of the major share writing companies. We'll bring that action, and we'll bring that action against them, and we will talk with the individuals who are impacted. But the ability to actually hit hard in the pockets of some of these major corporations, which we deal with, really sends a message that people are protected. It gives us the ability to really make systemic change, to address corporate policies, and to also hit some of these companies where it hurts, which is in their wallets, with fines and penalties. And so that's really important in terms of sending the message out. And then, of course, last but not least, when we have a victory, we do a press release. And we will make sure that that information goes out so that the community is aware that, number one, if this happens to you, there's a place you can go. And for those who are thinking about doing things that are not in compliance with the law, think twice, because the division will hold you accountable.
Thank you for that. And again, on the strain of us retaining our hope, there's a lot of rhetoric about things that may be changing on the federal level. How can you assure us about what is New York state law on many of these issues?
Well, here's the beautiful thing. I know that there's a lot of fanfare that goes on in D.C. with, I call it the Sharpie pen and the executive orders. That doesn't always have bearing here in New York, and I think that Washington, D.C. is doing a very good job of creating chaos and misinformation and anxiety and angst. But what we do need to realize is that the New York State human rights law has not changed. It is the same law that existed before this federal administration. It is the same law that will continue to exist after this administration. And so while federal protections are going out the window, the protections that are here in New York State are not. So I'll give you an example. We used to work with HUD with respect to housing discrimination work and our fair housing work. We no longer work with HUD. It's a result of probably an impact of about $2.5–3 million, which we're completely fine with. But the federal government was going to change the priorities for housing discrimination. And they made it abundantly clear that if you were talking about, filing a case of housing discrimination based on gender or sexual orientation or familial status, that was going to go on the bottom of the list. Those cases were not necessarily going to be important. And they started deprioritizing cases and protected classes that are legitimately protected here in New York. And we had to make a very hard decision. Well, not so hard, honestly. We had to make the decision to say, either we are going to subscribe to this or not. And we said, no, we're not. We're going to step away. We're not going to receive that funding because we're not going to compromise the values of who we are. And New York State law is in effect and still valid. And in New York State, you cannot discriminate against someone who may have a familial status that you disagree with just because. Those folks are still protected. So sorry, federal law, you're not doing what you're supposed to, but New York is going to protect those families to make sure that they still have equal access to housing. That's what's important to remember. So when we hear about EEOC and all the federal protections, you have to ask yourself, but is there a protection here rooted in New York law? And I can assure you that with 19 protected classes, there's protection here for everyone, and you can file a complaint. You can go to DHR or you can go to your city commission, but certainly, New York State law is incredibly progressive and expansive.
And what I love is this is the 80th anniversary of it.
Yes,
so
it
this
is.
is not new in New York State, 1945.
That's right.
And it's been continuing, and it evolves as the need evolves. Mm-hmm. So before I ask the commissioner to give closing remarks, I just want to ask, does anybody have another question? You're going to give closing remarks, but I just want to say first, before in case we run out of time, this has been a gift to all of us.
Thank you.
To have you here, to hear your perspectives, and to have you reinforce for us what protections we have here in New York State, regardless of the noise that's going on out there, and giving us the assurance that we are going to be protected here in New York. It's a gift to us, so thank you for that. So the floor is now yours.
Well, what I will say is this: take advantage of every single opportunity you have as a student. I will tell you that I miss the days of learning. I really do. And New York City is an incredible place to be. Get to know your neighbors, get to know your classmates, your advisors, the people that you work with, but know that you live in one of the best states in the country, one of the most dynamic cities of the world, and understand that the protections you have here are not going to go away. And there are people who wake up every single day and go to sleep every single day trying to make sure that you can have the life we all have, the life we want to pass on to the next generation, where you have unfettered access to every element of life here in New York State. That's what we do. That's my commitment to all of you. I'm a public servant. This is what I do. This is what I've committed my career to. But behind me, there are close to 300 individuals who are working tirelessly to make sure that all of us can live our best lives here in New York. And I encourage you to do that. And any of this resonates with you, please go to our website. Please go to our social media. Please share the word, because information right now is power. And that's what we really need. We need hope, as you mentioned, but we need information so that when we come across difficult times, we know what our rights are. That's something no one can take away. You don't need to spend $10,000. You don't need to retain a private attorney to file a case at the Division of Human Rights. You can pick up the phone, you will be assigned counsel, we will take care of your matter, and you can let us do what we do best, which is protect New Yorkers, hold bad actors accountable, and ensure that you have a life of access to, again, all the opportunities here in New York. So thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you. So, thank you for that. I want to thank our Adelante students. I want to thank Joshua, who runs the Adelante program, who was here recording. Raise your hand, Joshua, so we can see who you are. I want to thank Mindy Bockstein and her team. Rhea, thank you all for making this day possible. We've recorded it. We will use it because it's something we need as a constant reminder that that you're here to help us. And I love that part about that you don't need to be wealthy in order to be protected. So thank you for your service. Young folks in the room, we're looking forward to you taking her spot one day. So study hard because you're our next set of leaders. But thank you for being our current leader that we need for today.
Thank you, President.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.